Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're actually going to get into a topic that right now is trending in regards to a guy named Rollo Tomassi, who is a content creator in regards to the kind of pro-man space, red pill space, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of other content creators who are part of that same space, which I like to think of myself as part of that space, even though I'm kind of not at that same level of popularity. But then you have other guys who kind of chimed into the whole topic in regards to guys from like Fresh and Fit, guys like Sneeko, guys like Destiny, and I know I'm gonna butcher this, but mediocre MTH mediocre tutorial. MTR, mediocre tutorial reviews. I'm sorry that I'm butchering it, my bro. I'm a big fan of the channel. So a lot of people were kind of chiming in on this, and it kind of went viral because, he came up with a post that he tweeted that was essentially saying the quickest path to a high value man. Now, a lot of people started saying, what counts as a high value man? A lot of people like to refer to Kevin Samuels, aka the Godfather, in regards to what he denoted as a high value man. And being that he was very smart, very wise, very articulate, he did it in a way that wasn't just kind of, I'm throwing out random concepts, but concrete concepts and staples that anyone could kind of latch onto that were not very debatable. You kind of knew it was what it was. They weren't really left to opinion. And anything that you would add to that in terms of opinion, whether you want to say morally or this and that, would be something different. That's, subjective, where objectively the things he listed were very concrete. And I actually list them here. There were actually 6 things, but I combine number 1 into 2 things. We'll just run through those real quick and then kind of tackle on to what Rollo had spoke in regards to the quickest way and what part about that was very controversial. So Kevin Samuels had said one was consistently for 3 to 5 years making, he said $10,000 a month, which would equate to $120,000, but we're just going to say for an easy round number, $120,000. I'm sorry, 6 figures, $100,000 plus a year, because it's a lot more. Because $100,000, just a nice easy round number, anyone could kind of stick with. And to be honest with you, I don't think the difference between $120,000 and $100,000 really makes a difference. If you're like a guy who knows how to work with your money, that's not going to stop you from making a difference. So we're just going to go with that nice easy round number, $100,000 plus. His next thing was accepted by other high value men. So you have to kind of have other high value men view you as high value men or accept you into their circles, because you can't really be one high value man surrounded by other people who make less than you. And there are a lot of people who sometimes do that, but we're not going to digress. Generally speaking, you want to have a pool of other people who roll with you that are in that same kind of playing field that you kind of really bounce off of. Networking, which might sound the same thing, but networking with other high value men. And then secondly, he wrote other men in general. So networking, the difference between being accepted by other high value men is that they see you as high value. Networking with other high value men means that you have other people to call on for their resources or their abilities to actually, maybe do something. Maybe they can provide a service that you can use as trade. You say, hey, listen, you have access to that, whatever it is. Cool. You hook me up for free with that. Guess what? I got access to these other things. I'm going to hook you up for free for these. And we network rather than having to trade money. You're trading resources based on connections. Visibility, pretty much who you are in the world by your position. Will someone quickly notice who you are or what you do? Based on, he related it to job title, but it doesn't have to be like that. Say if you've got fame, then it wouldn't matter. But for the average person who doesn't have fame, your placement or replacement for fame, if you would call it, would be your visibility based on what you do. If you're like, say, a doctor, you're a lawyer, immediately they know, okay, if you're, like a contractor, somebody who, has a high value position, you are immediately noted by that position, your visibility, and you go, okay, I know what he does based on what his job title is, and I know that he's of high value because that position is a high value position maybe in the world. Generally speaking. Now, like I said, if you're someone who's just very known and famous, or even have some kind of following, then at that point, visibility will speak for itself within that. And so next we got provide utility. You have to be useful to your group. So it's not enough that you just bring money to the table. Some people might think that makes you high value because you just got money. But it's not enough just to say you have money. You have to be able to provide a utility. You have to be able to provide something within your space that other people are networking off of you. You know what I mean? That's part of with number 3 that we have listed here, having a network. What can someone call you up and say, hey, listen, I need to utilize some of your resources, not money, because if there are other high value people too, they probably have money too. But what are your, what other things can you bring to the table? So providing utility, being useful to your group. And generally speaking, if you have like, say, a job position, often you could provide utility just off that alone. Whatever your job is, maybe you get the inside, access from that job title, whatever it might be. Maybe it's a civil service job and you have access to do things other people wouldn't be able to do. Maybe you work at a corporation where you're able to say, hey, listen, I can tell you when this product's coming out. Maybe I can get a discount on that product, whatever the case is. But the point is that you provide some kind of utility. Now that sets the tone of what the high value guy is. This is not including things like morals, values, all those other kind of things. But generally speaking, in this man space, the things that's usually spoken to a lot of times in some of these channels about what they expect women to do is don't pursue career over getting a family. So in theory, the idea of the man being high value, at the end of the day, it's assumed to attract a female and be able to start a family and have a successful family, continue your lineage, and generally speaking, within that path, along the way, you're gonna gain experience. You're gonna gain experience with women, so you know what you're looking for. You're gonna gain experience in the business world, so you know how to make money. You're gonna gain experience all over the place. But the idea is at the end of that path is you starting a family to pass all that down to all that knowledge. Now, that's generally speaking. It wasn't listed in what Kevin Samuel said because everyone might be different in the way they kind of, shape how they want their future to be, still pertaining to being a high value man. But with that being said, we're going to take a look at Rollo's quickest path to becoming a high value man. The areas that people had contention with is number 1, number 2, and number 3. It will start. Do not get married was number 1. Number 2, avoid family creation. Number 3, vasectomy in your 20s, which some people argued on different podcasts that, hey, it's reversible. Then some people also argued that, hey, well, that procedure is not 100% reversible, and the risk of what you lose if you were to have it done is too high to even be playing with. But let's move forward. Lift consistently. I'm going to assume that means work out and get yourself in shape. Eliminate all sedations, which was another hot topic on a later debate about this whole topic, saying that what counts as a sedation, some form of addiction or something that you kind of dive into that could be argued. Learn, game plus network. Play to your strengths, build wealth, and resist easing up on your focus. So don't get lazy. Now, obviously, like I said before, the issues that a lot of people had, sorry about that, was everything above this line here. And generally speaking, everything below it, you could say falls right in line, similar to what Kevin Samuel spoke about. And we're going to use his rules as almost the gold standard because most people do, and there's really no flaws in it in terms of saying there's anything about it that's negative. You really can't say nothing about it's negative. With that being said, this is a template on just how to get there. I mean, on what you have to do to become a high value man. It's not necessarily saying morals and all that other kind of stuff. This part goes into aspects of morals, but it also goes into aspects of, I use that term loosely, morals, in a sense like, what do you consider wrong or right? Should you create a family? Should you not? Blah, blah, this and that. I use that term loosely, morals. It may not be the correct term to use for this, but generally speaking, most people will say, okay, well, the goal is to start a family. The goal is to pass on your lineage. Later on, Rollo tried to clarify to say he's not saying that don't do these things necessarily, but this is a foolproof, or for the idiot who doesn't know how to control himself, don't do these things in terms of don't get married, because we all know the divorce rates are very high, and there's a large percentage of that is initiated by women. This is facts that could be looked up. Avoiding family creation is he's trying to say don't do it right away, even though it would have been better if he detailed that. Don't do it right away, because you start a family in your 20s, you probably aren't going to be able to build up, and this kind of goes hand in hand with that. Get a vasectomy if you're one of those people who can't control yourself, because then you won't stop yourself from being able to get all these other things, get money, get wealth, whatever the case is, create networks. One problem that one person spoke about, Sneeko spoke about in one of these debates was that, and many people probably felt the same, is that, I think MTR also felt the same, is that if you can't control yourself, that you need to get a vasectomy, you will not have the strength of will to do all these other things, because these actually take probably a greater level of discipline to become wealthy than it is to control yourself to, just hook up with a lot of women. Because the truth is, there's many people hooking up with women. There's a lot less, and many people who can control themselves who can hook up with a lot of women and say, I'm gonna not do it. There's more people who do that than there are who are wealthy. So getting wealthy is a higher level of discipline, I would argue, and I think most people would agree with that. So the idea is that if you don't have enough discipline for that, number 3, you aren't going to have enough discipline for this. And hand in hand with that, if you eliminate your ability to have a family, or if this process ends up becoming irreversible, or you avoid family creation altogether, you eliminate essentially passing down your lineage, which some would argue you can't even be a high value man if you don't have a family, or at least aim to have a family. It doesn't mean you have to acquire the family, but you have to say to yourself, I at some point am going to try for it. If it doesn't happen, that may not be within your hands. Maybe you couldn't find the right person. Maybe things didn't go well. But the idea that it was in your plan to have that. Some people would argue that if that's not even in your plan, you are not a high value guy at all. And that could be up for debate. I'm not going to dissect that here. But getting married, a lot of people say that to say, well, because of the whole divorce rate and how much men lose. And I understand that. And a person could argue that to just say, well, you could be with somebody. You could even have the marriage ceremony without the law being involved, without the state being involved, without it being legal, and just say, hey, we did the ceremony. We're married to each other in spirit, in emotion, in bond, in our feelings, but just not on paper, which 100% is fine, because at the end of the day, the legal aspect of it doesn't make it fair to men or the person who's the major breadwinner, but most of the time that ends up being men. So that really became down to the argument, avoiding having family creation and having a vasectomy in your 20s. So that's just me discussing in general the debate. Now, my take on it and giving my opinion on it, I don't think a person should ever get a vasectomy. I think anything that's unnatural is dangerous in regards to you not being able to reverse it. I don't know too much on procedure, but I heard people speak on that it's not 100% that it can be reversed. You wouldn't play around with that any more than you would say, hey, listen, would you do something? Say if you have kids and they're born, they say, hey, you could make $1 million if you put your kids up for bet for this task. Now, there's a 2% chance that your kids will not be alive after whatever this bet is. But if you win the bet, you get $1 million. You just got to bet your kids. And there's just a 2% chance that they won't make it. Yeah, the odds are in your favor, but the price is too high. And that's the same concept with something like this. Even if they told you, and I think it's obviously not even like a 2%. I heard people throw out the word, I don't know, you could look it up. I heard people throw out that there's a, I think a 10 or 20% chance that it won't be able to be reversible. And that goes up to like, I think 35 after a certain age. I think if you're like past like 30 or 35 years old, that percentage goes up to like 35 that it's not reversible. I think the cost is immeasurable, and I wouldn't play with that any more than saying I would bet my living kids, because essentially what you're doing is betting them before they're even alive. So no, I don't agree with that. Secondly, avoiding family creation. Some people argue this, but I would tell you that the greatest source of happiness in the world that a person can have is having kids and watching your kids grow up, because that is the purpose of why we are alive. So, and that can't be disputed. As an individual, you might say, I don't feel like having kids, and that's cool. Maybe that's not for you. But the purpose of the human species, of all species, is to reproduce. So that is the meaning of life, regardless of whether you want to partake in it or not. That is the meaning of life. So it's the greatest level of joy. Even if you as an individual, it's not your greatest sense of joy, as a whole, it is the greatest sense of joy. And as a whole, everyone would argue, even if you don't want kids, you'd say it's required that people in the world have to be having kids, even if I'm not the one having kids. So with that being said, it's undisputable to say that it is the greatest sense of joy, even if it's not the greatest sense of joy for you, but for most people, it would be as a whole. So I definitely would never recommend someone not doing that. And then going back into the space of what I said in a previous video, you can check back on the channel for a previous video where I mentioned about relationship or emotional retirement. And essentially what that is, at a certain point in time when you get a certain age and you're like 80 something years old, when we retire, we don't just retire financially, we retire emotionally too. We need to have a basis for where you have a clan, a group, people that you created, your legacy, who takes care of you, who sits you down at the family house instead of sending you into an old folks home and says, hey, guess what, grandpa, great grandpa, listen, whatever you need, you got it. You want me to run to the store? You want me to cook you something? You want me to do anything? You sit inside your lazy boy couch and put your legs back, put your feet up, and you chill. Whatever you want is done. Your grandkids are here. They're going to jump all over. You get to see your legacy. Whatever you need is yours, because you gave to us when we were growing up. We're giving you everything. And instead of you being an old folks home where no one visits you, you have a legacy you created of kids and kids, grandkids, and they are there to see you every weekend, every other day, whatever you need at your beck and call, because at that point, money doesn't mean anything. When you're like 80, 85 years old, and if you're blessed to live that long, it's not going to matter to you that you have 5 boats, that you got 5 cars that you barely could get in because you can't, it pains you to even drive them because your ankles hurt, your knees hurt, everything like that. What's going to matter is, you got that fancy car, that fancy Lambo. You got a son who could say, get in the passenger seat, I'm going to take you for a drive. Or guess what? You got a boat. I'm going to help you get on the boat, your son, your grandson, and take you on a boat ride because you can't navigate it yourself. You're too old. Or just even being like, people to cater to you that actually love you, not just some caretaker who could care less whether, they're just getting paid. There's a big difference between that. And that's what I call emotional retirement. Having things set up so you can enjoy that phase of your life where money doesn't mean anything to you, but it means something to the people below you. And they're able to be grateful that you provided that for them, and they return it to you tenfold. And now you're worshipped as a king in your own household because you provided them so much. You lose the complete concept of emotional retirement. You lose it. And by the way, I think I'm the one who coined that phrase, but if you see it anywhere else, post in the comments if you ever heard that concept before, emotional retirement. But you lose that completely when you avoid family creation, and possibly, obviously, having a vasectomy, which would then force you to avoid family creation because you can't do it. So that's my take on that. I'm not going to say you can't be a high value man from not creating a family. But I definitely feel that if you're not trying to create a family, you and don't have that in mind, even if it doesn't happen, but if you don't have that in mind, I personally think to a degree you can't be a high value man, or you can't be as high of a value man, because you might provide to the world, but at a certain point, what you provide stops. When you have a legacy of kids, they provide by through your name. So if you've got a name, we'll say your last name's Brown, and they go, hey, he did X, Y, and Z great things, but guess what? His kids carried on the mantle to keep doing other things. The kids carried on the mantle to do other things. Matter of fact, for a better example, we'll say Bill Gates. If someone says, okay, Bill Gates' son, the Gates, or whatever, choose any example. We're just going to run with this one for now, just for argument's sake. They'll say his kids carried the mantle that he did, so his grandkids will carry that same mantle, and his kids after that will carry the same mantle. And then what happens is now they're always going to be known as the genius computer people who contributed to the world. But his legacy gets carried on because his kids carry the family name, carry that name within the world. And it means that it's going to keep going, dated back to the guy who started it. If you're a high value guy, your legacy ends with you. You aren't value past your own generation. And so in that case, some people would say you're not even very high value, because once your generation dies, who are you anymore? So that's food for thought. That's my take on things. Post in the comments what you think, what you feel. I know we kind of stretched this video a long time. Let us know what your thoughts are on the topic. Can you be a high value man without having a family? Are you not a high value man if you don't have a family? Is family creation more important than all the other things? Most people probably say yes, but post inside the comments whatever you feel, your topics on the discussion, and yeah, catch you guys in the next video.